and a ceremony to mark the return of a totem pole to Canada nearly a century after being sold to a Scottish museum. A huge totem pole is set to be returned to Canada nearly a century after it was sold to a museum in Scotland. It was carved from red cedar wood in the mid-19th century, stands at around 11 meters tall and weighs a ton. Indigenous researchers say the pole was stolen. Members of the Nisga'a Nation in northwestern British Columbia are taking part in a ceremony in Edinburgh to prepare it for the journey back of more than 4,000 miles.
It's very significant. It's a memorial pole, but it also represents a chapter in our living visual archive, right? And so if you think about each one of these totem poles, we would have many of them, and we have many of them within our nation. And so each one represents a sort of constitutional chapter about the Nisga'a peoples and our relationship to the lands that we belong.
Now, the final day of Europe's biggest street party, the Notting Hill Carnival, is underway in the streets of West London. It's now in its 55th year and celebrates Caribbean culture and history. Thousands of people
Mr. William Moore.
The charge takes effect from midnight. Helena Wilkinson, BBC News.
An ornately carved 36 feet tall totem pole, one of the biggest displays at the National Museum of Scotland, is set to be returned to Canada after nearly a century. Indigenous researchers in British Columbia say it was originally stolen and sold without the consent of local people. Members of Canada's Nisga'a Nation have taken part in a ceremony in Edinburgh to prepare for its journey home. Here's Katie Hunter.
This is a historic moment. People from the Nisga'a Nation at the National Museum of Scotland to prepare their totem pole for the journey home.
Off and all, today was probably one of the most happy days in my life, because I'm really emotional right now, and I could feel my ancestral grandmother.
The Nisga'a people believe this memorial pole is alive with the spirit of their ancestors. They say it was stolen almost 100 years ago from the Nass Valley and sold to what's now National Museums Scotland. An agreement to return it was reached last December. The totem pole will need to be brought out of the museum through a window in the middle of the night before being flown back to British Columbia by the Canadian military.
I'm really pleased that the pole will be returning to its home where its spiritual, cultural and historical significance is most keenly felt, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to use our procedure to work with the family to be able to help make this happen.
Mr. William Moore, if you will open our gathering.
The Nisga'a people say this is a significant moment of reconciliation. They hope the world is watching. Katie Hunter, BBC News, Edinburgh.